We're joined now by WVU tennis head coach Miha Lisac. And coach, we're getting ready to start the spring season here, but I want to start first where last season ended. Obviously, everything came slamming to a halt because of COVID-19, and you know, we're 7-3 at going into the middle part of the spring, and obviously everything just gets shut down. What was that just like, and how did you all adapt in that situation to move forward into the year we are currently?
Well, first, I mean, thanks for doing this with us, Tanner. You know, it's good to be back in the stage of preparing for the upcoming season. I guess, you know, we're all obviously looking forward to being back in competitive mode, right? As you noted, I mean, it's been quite a long time since we had competed as a team. So this is a very exciting part of the year for us. And you know, looking back on the end of last season, I don't remember the exact date, but sort of mid-March, everything came to a halt very suddenly, right? And I, you know, from very suddenly, I mean that none of us were really prepared for how to deal with the situation in the best way possible, right? A lot of things we had to figure out on the fly, right? Because when the season got shut down, you know, in that moment, the least of your concerns are, you know, the tennis and the matches that were canceled, right? The bigger concern become the, you know, student athlete well-being, and making sure that everyone is taken care of, and making sure that we have the best information possible in how to move through the rest of the semester, so that our student athletes can continue to be successful in the classroom, continue to study, work towards their degree or towards finishing the semester well, in the safest manner possible, right? We have quite a few international student athletes on our roster, and that becomes then a question of what is it the safest way to either help student athletes travel back home or remain on campus, or there are a lot of questions that come up in a situation like that that we didn't necessarily have immediate answers to, right? Like I'm sure no one else did, right? But as we had started moving towards the spring semester, it was very evident that we needed to adapt, that we needed to refigure a lot of things, starting with academics and how we can be successful in the classroom through distance learning, and making sure that we provided all the same support, or maybe even higher level of support than we did prior to the pandemic outbreak, to our student athletes. Some of them traveled home, so they needed, you know, we needed to adapt in how we're providing support to them. Some, you know, remained on campus, so we had to make sure that we were able to figure out exactly what their situation on campus was going to look like, in terms of support and studying and everything else that they had to figure out, because all of a sudden, you know, they weren't allowed to leave the apartment, or you know, there were just a lot of things that came up. So that was our immediate concern, right? As we progressed through the spring semester into the summer, and then as we started getting ready for the fall, it became very evident that this was not a situation that was going to last just for a couple of months and then we were back to normal. So in that, we took a step back and started looking at what are the things that we did have control over. What were the things that we could address, that we could target, that we could improve in a given scenario, and how can we best prepare for the upcoming fall semester with the constraints that we had in place. So that was kind of our mindset going from last year to this year. But obviously, just like anyone else out there in their job or in their home life, or you know, we all had to take a step back and rethink things and reconsider things and reinvent some, you know, things that, you know, that were just different, right? So a lot of things have changed. I believe we have adapted with the change. And honestly, I feel like we now have certain tools where we can operate more efficiently than we did before. So, that's kind of that was a transition for us from the fall, from last spring into this fall, and now obviously getting ready for the current semester.
You talk about the fall, and the ITA did a very good job this year. The Intercollegiate Tennis Association did a really good job this year of putting together a fall circuit that still allowed teams to compete and get some matches that are very, as you would agree, very crucial in preparing for your dual matches during the spring. So, granted, one of those matches for WVU is canceled this year, but we were still able to get in some competition up here in Morgantown as a part of that fall circuit. Talk about just the importance of that, and just how even having just one event during the fall can help you prepare for the spring, as opposed to, not having anything this fall would not, how that would have maybe stifled how you prepared for this spring season.
Another example of I feel of an entity that adapted well was the ITA, right? I believe that the ITA was thrown into this situation obviously unprepared, not because of the lack of their own preparation, but because this was just a very new situation. A lot of tournaments were getting canceled. So the summer competition was affected first and foremost, and what most college players are used to is competing in the summer. And we have a pretty extensive fall semester schedule that we use to prepare for the spring, as you noted, and that all got kind of thrown out, right? So I believe the ITA did a very good job of making sure that under given circumstances, there were competitions available, that we were still able to use not nearly as much as we would have under normal circumstances, but that college players were still able to compete at least partially in the fall semester and use that as preparation for their spring. We have a little bit of an unfortunate situation that we are very detached from where the rest of the Big 12 conference is, and the Big 12 conference did a very good job of having the rest of the conference, so the other 9 women's tennis programs, cooperate and compete on their own campuses, hosting tournaments and being able to have a pretty good fall semester, right? Because we are so detached geographically from where the rest of the conference is, we were unable to participate in those competitions because that would require us to fly and travel across the country, right? So it's a safety issue, right? So needless to say, I'm not happy about the fact that we're at a disadvantage here, but again, that is completely outside of our control. So in a given situation, we were able to get at least some competition in preparation for the spring. So I feel like the Big 12 did a very good job at ensuring the competitions, but the ITA was able to pivot and kind of allow us to host tournaments as well, to make sure that we would get as much competition in as possible. So that was a shortened fall, but fall nonetheless, right? We could have been in a situation where either we would be stuck at 0 competitions, as some other schools were, or potentially 0 competitions and no practice, right? Which would have been a very different type of situation, right?
Pivoting over to the spring season now, obviously you talk about the Big 12, and most would argue it's the best women's tennis and men's tennis conference in the nation. And you have 9 matches in the Big 12 this year, obviously, and then 4 non-conference matches beginning next Friday, with Cleveland State then hosting VCU and a home and away series against Marshall. This is a good looking schedule here, Coach, and one that offers a lot of challenges, but a lot of opportunities to go out and prove that you can compete at the highest level, like you've always mentioned.
Absolutely. It is a little bit of an adapted schedule for us. It is, we are starting our match play later in the spring season than we normally do. You know, by now we would have probably had, you know, 4 or 5 matches under our belt, let's say, and we probably would have been competing this coming weekend as well. We had, you know, somewhat of a unique situation in preparation for the spring semester, with having a few positive tests for the players that were at home, having a player that was unable to return back to campus to compete this spring semester. So our roster started looking very thin for early in the spring semester. And, you know, that combined with already having a lack of matches in the fall semester, we had decided to push the start of the spring season back to allow us to be ready and prepared for matches when we do get to that point. But regardless of that, we're very excited at the, you know, the fact that we're starting a week from today against Cleveland State at home. I cannot tell you how excited I'm going to be back on the court and actually competing, as you know, to have the whole team together and actually, you know, go through a team match. We have 4 newcomers on the team, 3 freshmen. You know, they've never been in a college team match. You know, so it's going to be a very exciting time for us, and we're all looking forward to it. And then, you know, obviously for most of the rest, for most of the spring season, you know, we have pretty much weekly competition. You know, I think, you know, starting with Cleveland State, competing against VCU, I think is a very good starting point for us. You know, both teams that can give us that next step of preparation for our first road trip, which will be to Texas and Baylor, and then obviously the rest of the spring season. We're always looking forward to competing against Marshall, a little bit of an in-state rivalry. You know, this year, because of the lack and cancellation of some of the other matches, we're doing a home and away series, which I think is great. You know, that that coaches at Marshall and the teams and us were able to, you know, accomplish something like that, right? I think it'll benefit both programs. So I feel like it's a nice mix of out of conference matches, and obviously then, you know, going into conference competition, as you noted, we're always going to have our work cut out for us, right? You know, we're very excited with the talent level that we have in place. You know, we have always, you know, aimed at disrupting the Big 12 conference. We have always aimed at being in position to, you know, to be the team that is maybe the most surprising, right? Where we can endanger a lot of the teams that we play against, where we can, you know, pull out victories, you know, against teams that, you know, maybe historically on paper we shouldn't have, right? But this is a very different team, right? We're not the same team as we were in the past, and I am very much looking forward to going through the 9 matches and finding out where we stand. That's, you know, pretty much week in and week out. I feel like we will have obviously a great challenge in front of us, which is always going to be the case, but also an outstanding opportunity to showcase where we are as a program, as a team, and who we are today, right? Versus, you know, where this team was in the past.
You hit on your personnel there just a little bit, talking about the newcomers and the returners. And obviously, like you said, 4 newcomers, 3 freshmen, and a graduate transfer. And, you know, while that might provide a little bit of a learning curve for some, you do have 3 returners that have played a lot of tennis here at WVU, and a lot of, you know, tennis that is meaningful tennis given the experience of the Big 12 conference. Just hit a little bit more on your roster and maybe who you think can step up and show some people really what they can do, and maybe even turn some heads in the Big 12 and maybe here within the region or on a national level.
Well, as you noted, we have a very well versed team this year. We have 3 returners that were, you know, that all have extensive experience already. 1 senior and 2 juniors. They have all played a lot of tennis outside of conference, but especially in the Big 12 conference. You know, all of them have had some success in the Big 12 conference, so we're very excited about that. But most importantly, they bring experience and leadership in understanding and helping the younger crew come along and kind of prepare for what we will face in the Big 12 conference. We have 3 freshmen that all bring an outstanding amount of talent to our program. We're very excited about each one of them individually, but all 3 of them as a group, it's that much more exciting to be adding a recruiting class, which I believe was just outside of top 25 nationally. We ended up at number 27, I believe. So that's, I think that speaks for itself. A lot of credit goes to Jacob, our assistant coach, for the coordination, the recruiting efforts, the all the work that goes into just the daily grind of finding all of these players, the communication, the coordination, making sure that they are obviously, at that time they actually were still on visits, which is a little hard to believe, but that's still a little bit more than a year ago when they were here on visits actually. We're very excited, and then obviously we're adding Hunter, a graduate transfer, who just like the freshman brings a great amount of talent but at the same time experience from the ACC conference, transferring in from University of Virginia. So with Hunter, it's kind of a great combination of somebody who's already been there for 4 years, right? Who has immense experience, but at the same time adds a tremendous amount of talent to our program, right? So it is a very nice mix, but I think you are right in that Anne-Sophie, Nicole, and Nastya are the 3 that I believe provide that anchor within the team in making sure that we are all moving in the right direction. Hunter has actually stepped up tremendously in terms of the leadership role from the day that she came to the team, right? Regardless of the fact that she's new to our program, she has competed at a very high level. She has played, with a very good team, and she has a good amount of understanding of a team building process, the responsibility of juniors and seniors towards freshmen. So she has really stepped in right along the lines with everybody else in a leadership role. So I feel like we have a nice group of 4 upperclassmen and 3 freshmen that we're now continuing to gel, put together, and make sure that we are best prepared for when we hit that competitive part of the season. But you look at Hunter, Nicole, Sophie, Nastya, and you balance that out with Momoko, Nadia, and Amber, right, as freshmen. And I feel like this is really a good spot to be, right? Like, yes, there will be a little bit of a learning curve for freshmen, but that is always the case, right? And I believe that with good leadership and with continuing to be dedicated to the process and learning and getting better, that learning curve can be fairly steep, right? I mean, it can, they can learn very quickly, right? It doesn't have to be a long, slow learning curve, right? I think they have all shown, in some cases, a lot of maturity already. So I believe they will be ready to compete.
Coach, it's your 8th year here, and you have 10 plus years of coaching experience. What is something you know now, or something that you've learned over time that has helped you in your coaching career, and something that you're going to take heading into this 2021 season?
How much time do we have, Tanner?
Loads.
As you know, and you and I have talked about this before. Process of growing and learning doesn't just happen with players. We grow and we learn every year, and we always upgrade the way we do things. We always learn from previous experiences, what we did well, what maybe we didn't do as well, what we have to do better. And we always look to incorporate those things into our program. One of the things that is at the very core of what we do we always want to be better than we were the previous year, the previous semester, whatever it may be, right? We have a mountain to climb in the Big 12 conference, but I believe if we continue to put one foot in front of the other, and continue to move in the right direction and step forwards, we are bound to get there, regardless of how far a certain distance may feel, right? A couple of years ago or something like that, right? But if there's one thing that I would point out, if I would compare where maybe I am today versus where I was at the beginning of my career, is that one of the things that I've learned is never take anything for granted, right? Just because just because we had done something well in the past, that does not mean that is just granted for us, for us to continue in the future, right? We always, as a team, have to go through the steps of making sure that the fundamentals are in place, that we are working well together, that we are communicating well, that we are, addressing all the steps of the team building process, of us being unified as a team, us being working towards the same goals, right? And I would probably say that in the beginning of the semester, having the beginning of my career, having less of coaching experience, there were times when I took these things for granted, or expected them to happen just because they happened in the past, right? And that's one of the things that I've learned from, and that's one of the things that we're not going to skip in the future.
A couple final thoughts from you here, Coach. Obviously, this year of COVID-19 and this global pandemic has, taught us a lot, shown us a lot, and it's been trying at times. But like you have referenced, it has been a learning experience at times, and there are a lot of things that we have learned during this time that we will keep with us moving forward into the future. What is the biggest thing you've taken away from this year that you'll keep with you, for the rest of your life or for the rest of your coaching career?
That we can actually be a lot more efficient in what we're doing than we were so far, right? We just never really looked at things from a different perspective, right? That because we didn't have to. So, what this has taught me is that even in ways that we have been very set in for years and years and years in how we conducted communications, in how we conducted a lot of functionality of the team, we have actually found that we can be a lot more effective and efficient in accomplishing the same goals, either in a lesser time period or being able to dedicate more time towards certain goals. And I think, obviously, we will keep these processes with us even when the pandemic is over. But at the same time, it has also taught me to take time, sit back, and look at things that even other areas of the program where we feel like, hey, we've done this for a long time, right? And in really trying to be critical of ourselves and be critical of the program, if this is really the best way to go, right? Or if there's a way to improve upon our experiences.
We'll get one last thought from you here. Coach, before you take the court next week against Cleveland State for the first time in a long time, what is your message to your team as we get into this spring 2021 season?
Without a doubt, let's appreciate every opportunity when we step out on the court. Because as we have experienced in the spring semester of last year, and to some extent in the fall semester of 2020, we never know when those opportunities are taken away from us, right? And every time when we step on the court, let's treat it as if this is the match, and this could potentially be the last match. We don't know, right? And let's treat it that way. Let's enjoy it. Let's embrace the fact that we can be on the court, compete, and finally be back as a team and experience what it means and how great it feels to be competing well together as a program. So enjoying that process and appreciating every time when we are out together, I think is the biggest message that we can all embrace.
He is WVU tennis coach Miha Lisac. Thank you, Coach, for your time today, and we look forward to the 2021 spring season.
Thank you, Tanner. Thank you for having me, and we're excited.